What's up, guys? Welcome back. It's Ari coming at you with chapters 16 to 20 of the first book in the Wheel of Time series, The Eye of the World. If this is your first time here, please comment, subscribe, tell me what you think of this book if you've read it already. If you haven't, you know, it's pretty late. I'm sleepy. Let's just get into it. So we start right where we left off in the last chapter. Basically, Nynaeve has appeared in the town. She is currently hanging out with Moiraine. Oh, but before we get to that, Min approaches Rand, and she basically tells him that Nynaeve being near Moiraine is not good. Basically, when she sees the two of them together, she sees what she called sparks. And she said usually it would only happen when like 3 or 4 of them were together, but it happens immediately when Nynaeve and Moiraine are around each other. So my assumption is that sparks are not good. Sparks seems like attention, so maybe they are attracting attention just by being close to one another. But yeah, didn't really know how else to interpret that. She also tells Thom to go juggle something. I thought it was pretty good. But yeah, we move on to Nynaeve and Moiraine. They're basically just chit-chatting. Nynaeve wants the Emond Fielders back. Moiraine is pressing very hard to keep them. And she starts actually asking questions about... she asks where Rand, or rather, if any of the children's, or if any of the boys were born out of Two Rivers. And obviously Rand kind of freaks out about this when he finds out that she was asking these questions, and he tells Nynaeve what Tam sort of muttered to him when Tam was injured. But Nynaeve tries to assure him basically that, you know, when Tam came back home, Rand was in his arms and his mother was at their side, which, I mean, does not necessarily mean that they had a child. But I'm assuming that we're going down the path of Rand is definitely not Tam's child. Rand heads to wherever Thom Merrilin is, I forget, but Thom Merrilin basically starts performing. He tells a bunch of stories, then he starts performing, and everyone starts to dance. Rand dances with Egwene, Nynaeve, Moiraine, and he tries to get better with every sort of dance, and I think he does. But it ends on kind of a nice note. We move on to chapter 17, Watchers and Hunters. Rand notices this sort of sketchy guy in the crowd while they're all dancing. Kind of keeps track of him. I think Matt notices him as well. And he eventually goes to Lan, tells him about it. Lan sort of looks around, doesn't see anything, and he's like, look, I don't sense anything, so it's probably nothing. Again, Lan never really panics. He's like super chill. But everything goes basically from 0 to 100. Right after that, Rand goes back to his room, and right when he gets to his room, Amir Drawl appears, and yeah, a lot starts to happen. He basically is about to... I think he's trying to get him to meet the Dark One. Something along those lines. I don't think he was going to kill him, but he was trying to do something. I feel like it's the same thing that the Trolloc was doing, like, way back when it was telling him to, like, wait and stuff. It was weird. But before anything can really happen, like, Lan arrives and the Fade just disappears. And every single one of them is just like, okay, we gotta go. So they just start packing up. Moiraine goes straight to the innkeeper and basically tells him, like, look, if anybody comes here and asks questions, comply. Just tell them what they want to know. It is not worth it. And he is very kind. I don't know how else to put it. Optimistic, maybe. And he doesn't take her advice very seriously. So I was not surprised by what happened at the end of the chapter. But they basically just ditch. They head out. Nynaeve joins them. They get to the gates, speak to the guards, convince them to open the gates, and then right as they open the gates, boom, there's like 5 white cloaks standing there, and one of them is obviously the guy who pissed, or rather who got pissed off by Matt and Rand, but mostly Matt. And it becomes a whole situation, but it ends with Moiraine basically like turning into a giant, I think is what happens. She like towers over the wall and distracts them, and as she's like doing that, everyone just kind of books it through the gate. They shut the gate and Moiraine just like walks over it. Yeah. And then they just start running. Moving on to chapter 18, the Camelin Road. If it didn't hit the fan before, it definitely does now. They're on the run. I believe they're a few days into their journey, and Lan begins to sense the presence of Trollocs and Fade. So he basically leaves, scouts, and sees that there are basically hundreds of them following them. You start to hear horns. Rand is starting to get really anxious, and he keeps like measuring or trying to figure out how far away they are based on the sound of the horns. It's a whole thing. Basically, they eventually run into a big ambush, and they just have to fight. Matt starts like shouting nonsense. Lan clashes with a Fade, and their like clashes of blades create this blue light that very cinematic. He gets the upper hand though, and I believe he slices its head off. Moiraine is lighting them all on fire. Cool. I think they somehow kind of found a way out through the crowd. They get away. They're still getting chased, and Moiraine uses the wind to like move their scent to slightly distract the enemy so they can figure out where to go. And you know, Lan does the classic, "There's a place that Trollocs will not go, that we can," and immediately Moiraine just stops him right there and is like, "No, we're not doing that." So I was like, oh, can't wait to immediately go to that spot. And by the end of the chapter, they do go there. They talk about it being this place of sort of prosperity, I believe. It used to be called Eredal, but after it died, it was given a different name, and now it's called Shadar Logoth. Pretty badass. Definitely not a place of goodness and prosperity, I would assume. But that is where they're setting up their camp for the night. Then we move on to chapter 19, Shadows Waiting. So they make it to Shadar Logoth. It's this mass of ruins. The sort of ruins are huge, apparently. They tower over like buildings in White Bridge and stuff like that. So it's a big, eerie place that is eerily quiet. And for some reason, the moment they find the opportunity, Rand, Matt, and Perrin ditch. They literally leave. They just leave their party in the middle of a ruined city that was not a great place by the end. And, you know, you would assume, oh, what's the worst possible thing that could happen? Oh, they run into something. Well, they do. They actually do run into someone. They run into a person, and their name is Mordith. It's all sketchy, and I don't know if there's like something to do with the One Power happening, if they're being like charmed or something, but they're very cooperative. Like, they give him a lot of information. They tell him where they're going. They tell him their names. They tell him a lot. He leads them to treasure. It's just too good to be true, you know? And he kind of freaks out after one of them points out that they're with a bit larger party. And Mordith gets upset because he feels lied to or something. And then everything turns into a Kubrick film for like, I don't know, 10 seconds. He like bloats into a large thing, disappears. It's like an illusion. And all you see is Mordith like in the fetal position. And then I think he turns into a wisp of smoke. Then he just disappears. So, I don't know. And then Matt steals a dagger. So, yeah, it's gonna go great. They eventually just start running out of the ruins with the treasure. They don't take anything except for Matt, and they get back to the party and just say like, we screwed up. And then Lan gets there and is like, there are Trollocs in the ruins, we have to go. And that is the end of chapter 19, and we move right on to chapter 20, which is titled Dust on the Wind. This is a pretty big chapter. This, I think, is pretty much setting up a large portion of what this story is going to be. They all start running through the ruins of Shadar Logoth. Trollocs are pouring in, but there's also this mist that has appeared that Moiraine calls Mashadar, and it's all-consuming. It seems to be killing everything that it encapsulates. So they are hauling, but eventually the party just completely splits up. This is how we get split. Moiraine and Lan go on their own. Perrin splits with Egwene, and then he falls into a river, so I'm assuming that he's going to find Egwene. Rand and Mat are running away from these Trollocs, and Thom comes to save the day. He seems to be adept with throwing knives, so he knows a bit more than just skills in entertainment. But he helps them. They keep running. The entire group tries to meet at the River Arenelle. They get to the River Arenelle. They see this boat. They just jump onto the boat, swindle their way onto it as these Trollocs jump on and start fighting, and something crazy happens. One of these Trollocs is about to kill Rand, or at least slash him with a blade, and Rand, I think he screams no. And as he does that, the ship lurches. So I think he definitely did something. I don't know if I'm assuming it's channeling or accessing the one power. They basically swindle their way onto the boat, like I said, and the boat is already going down the river towards Whitebridge, so that's where they're headed. That is the end of those 5 chapters of the book. Very interesting. I think it ended nicely with everyone being split up now, and now I'm trying to picture these sorts of scenarios they're going to try and get themselves in. My assumption is they're going to be split up for a great deal of the book, and hopefully they're interwoven back in this book. Because, there's 14 of these books. I just hope that I don't have to wait a bunch of books to see all of these guys reunite again. But, maybe they reunite now and then they split up again. And then, But either way, I'm enjoying the it does feel kind of slow, but I'm liking it right now. I hope it picks up a little more as this goes on. But we will see when we get there. But until then, thank you guys so much for watching. Please comment what you think of those 5 chapters, what you think in general. Try not to spoil anything for me, but I don't care too much for spoilers. To keep it to within this book. But yeah, I'll see you guys on the next episode. Peace out.